Hello and welcome to Thought Leaders with Robotics and Automation News.com, a new series in which we discuss market trends and business perspectives with key executives in the industry. In this edition, we speak to Matt Wade, Head of Marketing for BlueBotics, which is probably one of the most understated and yet most successful providers of autonomous mobile robot technology, as Matt will explain.
Hi there. Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Matt Wade. I'm the head of marketing here at BlueBotics. So my job is to promote our autonomous navigation solutions. Our technology is called ANT. We work primarily with vehicle makers on developing new AGVs, AMRs, automated forklifts. So our small marketing team works on the messaging for that, content that customers and end users might find useful, and obviously chats like this.
So I know reasonably well what BlueBotics is, although obviously not as well as you do. I know that it has an AMR of its own, but mainly it's known for providing software and platforms and things like that. You can elaborate in a minute, but there's something new you're launching. Tell us about that first.
Sure thing. Yes. Our new project is separate to what you're seeing here. So this is our BlueBotics website, where we explain all about our navigation systems that go inside autonomous vehicles. The new project, however, is a new site. It's called antdriven.com. So we're talking more about here the vehicles that this type of technology goes inside. So we're talking automated guided vehicles, automated forklifts, AMRs, autonomous systems that are used in industry primarily. And the aim of this site is to provide an education, a full guide, and a learning journey for anyone who is potentially interested in this type of vehicle technology. So it might be a warehouse manager, for example, or an automation manager in a larger manufacturing plant, somebody who's tasked with improving efficiency, improving safety on site, and who is really looking to learn about this type of vehicle technology. So in this site, we really try and move the visitor through that whole learning journey, from basic questions like how do AGVs work, how do they navigate, how does the safety work, and so on, how do fleets work, how can they work together, right the way through different tools and exploration like calculating ROI or browsing different vehicles, all the way through down to the final offer of the site, which is we have a kind of expert logistics team underneath that. So if anyone uses the site and they have questions and they think, oh, okay, which type of vehicle could make sense for our application, at the end of that process, there's basically the offer of a free consultation where we can explore their application together and make some recommendations, as to what type of automated vehicle could make sense.
Thanks for that, Matt. As I say, I know BlueBotics reasonably well, and I was curious at the beginning what it was, what its main product or service was. Now, obviously, it kind of emerged out because you had a hardware, an AMR of your own, or something like an AMR, I think, but you had software, and that obviously was your primary service, and that's developed into something of a great success for you. I'm really glad about that, because we covered you right from the beginning, as when we could, as early as we could. I'm not sure how long has BlueBotics been around?
Well, we celebrated our 20-year anniversary last year in 2021. So we were founded in 2001, and the first commercial vehicle with ANT navigation inside went into operation in Italy in 2009. So we're getting on over a decade of commercial installations. And I think today, probably the up-to-date number is around 3,500 vehicles across all our customer brands operating in industry around the world.
Mm. So our website has been online for about 6 years, and obviously BlueBotics has been around a lot longer. AGVs themselves been around about the same time, 20, 30 years, I suppose. And for members of the audience that might not know, AGVs are the I suppose old version of AMRs. They usually move on rails. They're more like trains, I suppose. Mini little trains have magnetic rails which they follow. AMRs are the more autonomous ones. They can work out their own route. They don't need rails. But AGVs have also evolved to become a little bit more spontaneous, not spontaneous, able to navigate without rails. But what interests me about this new website, antdriven.com, that you've introduced us to, is all these. I mean, you've been around for 20 years. It's no surprise that you know all these types of AMRs. The market has grown and diversified so much, even in the 6 years, 7 years that we've been publishing. Tell us about the diversification of and the development of the market. As I say, to simplify, AGVs came first, and now the last few years, couple of years, 2, 3 years especially, has been all about AMRs. Tell us about some of the things that you've observed in that time, and what kind of machines are we looking at here?
Yeah, exactly. I think your historical analysis is spot on with my understanding. 3 decades ago, these machines were either running on rails or following, then after that, following lines on the floor. And then more recently, you've had technologies like laser navigation and what we do, which is natural navigation. These machines were typically always autonomous, so designed, automated from the ground up. And what you've seen in more recent years is starting to see more automated forklifts. So let's say a manual driven forklift vehicle that the manufacturers has, let's say, transformed into having an automated version of that available. So we're slowly starting to see more of those vehicles come to market. On the AMR side, yeah, it's one that is best served by a bit of definition, I think, because I talk to a lot of people who, myself included in the past, can easily get confused between AGVs and AMRs. And the way we categorize them on the site, to make that very clear, I would say, is that an AGV, so like, let's say the 2 Oceaneerings you see here on the left, or even the Rhino there in the middle, is basically an automated guided vehicle that's designed and developed from the ground up to be automated. It's not hybrid. You can't jump on as a driver and drive that around. So that's fully automated. And the modern versions, like our customers' versions, have things like natural navigation driving them. An automated forklift, as I say, is perhaps built on the base of an existing manual forklift. So in a lot of cases, those vehicles can be hybrid. So they might work automatically all day, but if there's let's say an impromptu situation where somebody needs to jump on and go collect something that's not programmed, they can do that as well. AMRs, which are usually smaller systems, I think the US definition is basically that they have the ability to move around obstacles. So your AGV will typically stop using its safety sensors, and you need your staff to be employed to move the blockage so it can carry on. AMRs have that ability to dynamically move around a blockage before they return to their existing path. Just to explain where we sit, so the ANT, its navigation, kind of is able to do both those things. So we work with producers of AGVs and AMRs and automated forklifts. And the question of whether it has obstacle avoidance or not is really determined by the application. Honestly, for heavy industry, often it's more intuitive not to have that. But for more smaller service robotics, maybe a cleaning robot, you're looking to cover a surface and the path doesn't so much matter. So there, obstacle avoidance can make more sense. So I've swayed off your question a little bit, but yeah, I agree with the historical context. I think up to now, in the customers we've worked with, been a lot of AGV companies, a good number on the smaller AMR side, and perhaps as you might imagine, the bigger automated forklift side is the slower, perhaps the slightly slower mover, bigger companies with big existing portfolios of manual vehicles. But we're starting to see more and more of those now come to market. Yeah, that's a big growth opportunity in the future, but it is growing, but that's perhaps the slower mover than was the take up of AGVs in the beginning.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your elaborate answer because, you know, it's difficult to, not difficult, but it's a learning process for all of us. The technology and the market is developing quite rapidly and in directions that we require us all to learn. So AMRs, as you know, I'm sure, and certainly our readers know, over the last, say, 3 years, have been really a great topic of interest. And now, as a result of your answer there, I'm kind of understanding that forklifts, driverless forklifts, autonomous forklifts are kind of taking over that buzz mantle of, you know, being the buzz thing at the moment. A few years ago, I did go to events where autonomous forklifts were shown, but they weren't in the market, as it were, as much as they're probably either are now or about to be now. But going back to, as I say, you obviously work for BlueBotics, and your navigation software is capable of running all of these things. It's one of any software company wants to become the Microsoft Windows of any hardware going. So in this case, you're looking at hardware that is essentially logistics, intralogistics, supply chain, warehouse, that sort of a vehicle, internal vehicle. And you're basically saying, am I right in thinking BlueBotics is basically capable of fitting into any of them? Are there ones that are proprietary that you don't get a look in on, or can you be installed? Can your software be installed on pretty much anything? How do these hardware things work?
Good question. Yeah, we're mainly our core product is mainly software. It's controlling the vehicles and the fleet manager, but we do have a hardware component that slots inside. Usually, when we work with vehicle makers, we work with them on new vehicle projects, which means so we might work with Stocklin there in the middle, or Toyota in the States, or somebody, and we'll to some degree help them develop the vehicle, help them obviously integrate our tech into that. Of course, there are competing navigation technologies, and of course, there are producers of vehicles who work on their own navigation options. So for sure, they're not limited purely to our side. But we typically work with them there from the ground up. We do have other types of customers, however, who to a smaller number of customers, but who, let's say, retrofit existing vehicles, who might take one particular brand of forklift and take those manual models and then work as a third party to work with us and produce new automated models of those. So that's something we see happening as well.
Toyota, you mentioned, they're absolutely massive, well, in every sense, but forklift trucks, the manual, traditional driven, human driven ones, they're massive in that. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of converting those into driverless ones, I mean, you know, it's quite something, isn't it? It's a huge number of forklifts that are out there. Not just Toyota, of course, but already. How many forklifts would you guess that they're out there, human driven? Say in America, for example.
Oh, wow. I don't have the figure exactly, but tens of thousands for sure.
Yeah.
What you see, I would say, interesting, what I've kind of learned from my side about the forklift manufacturer space is that obviously, even today, the core of their revenue is coming from manual trucks. And those are usually being sold via local dealers, local distributors. Developing automated models and selling automated models is a different proposition, in the sense that obviously they want to introduce these in a measured way, so that they're still maximizing revenue. They're not looking to cannibalize the existing business, of course, but also the installation process of an automated forklift is very different to somebody just buying a new version of a manual forklift that their drivers probably have driven before or would be quick to learn. So installing the vehicle is obviously about mapping the site, about programming routes, about testing that, simulating different behaviors like picking and dropping pallets and so on. So initially, that's a more involved process. And it needs some analysis from a forklift company's point of view as to whether that's the type of project that can be done by an existing manual truck dealer, or whether a different type of partner is needed for that.
Interesting. I mean, with what I'm getting from that answer is that pretty much every situation, every customer that comes to you needs a little bit of customized sort of a customized approach. You know, the specific location, specific shape of the floor, or the space in which the machine is going to operate is going to have to be mapped out, and a solution developed thereafter. And it may or may not be a manual or traditional forklift truck that gets hybridized or fitted with your ANT navigation technology. So yeah, I suppose that's a big part of your job. And what's the market like for you? I mean, we've talked about automated forklifts, but you obviously, as you said, you also deal with AGVs and AMRs all together in the aggregate. What's the market like been for you? I know that BlueBotics was either in partnership or got bought by another company. Tell us about the business side of it and corporate side of it, and share any numbers that you can.
Yeah, well, while I won't be able to share revenue numbers, I would say since that first commercial deployment in 2009, the growth has been steady and incremental, I would say, and really pushing into faster growth like around 2018. Obviously, COVID was a challenge for everyone right through the supply chain, so we had a challenging year there. But then, as you mentioned, like at the end, I believe, end of last year, December last year, we were actually acquired by Zappi Group, which is an Italian-based producer of components for electric vehicles. So across the board, motor drives, inverters, battery chargers, and over and above the AGV space. I mean, forklift trucks, golf buggies, a huge range of applications. And their group of companies that they had does a lot of the components. If you imagine a cross section of an electric vehicle, what was missing was the software, fleet management, autonomous navigation component. So I think we slot nicely in there, and I think we really see this integration within Zappi Group as having great potential for us to grow wider and faster in the future. Their company's very established. They have kind of reach all over the world in terms of regional locations and so on, and great long-standing links with big vehicle makers. So we see that as being very positive, and we expect to hopefully reap the benefits of that.
That's absolutely fascinating, because a few years ago I was thinking, where is the nexus between these AMRs that we're seeing pop up in warehouses in very increasingly large numbers, and the autonomous cars that are being tested on roads, as well as in enclosed industrial spaces like mines and whatever, airports or something. Where is the nexus? Where is the crossover? And I guess what you're saying, the I don't know what to call it, the new corporate structure that you've got is kind of representative of the convergence, is that the right word, of those two kind of technological trends. It's not just a warehouse where navigation technology is being developed and used and very successfully, commercially sort of, sold. And whereas on the public roads, you got a lot more hurdles to overcome, but people generally possibly not as averse to the idea of autonomous vehicles, maybe in the future, especially when it comes to public transports, small shuttles and so on. Regulation is also catching up. And certainly people are interested in clean energy vehicles, electric vehicles. So I'm really interested in, obviously you'd be speculating if you were to talk about what your company's plans are. Maybe you actually know, or whatever, but I can see how that would be a massive market for a company like yours. Certainly it's a massive market for everybody. What do you think of that whole convergence possibility between autonomous robots in warehouses and autonomous cars on the roads, electric or otherwise?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how to answer it from a technical point of view. What I would say is that big group, that spread of solutions that is offered across the group today is overlapping into that kind of outdoor commercial vehicle on the road kind of space. So in things like electric buses and so on. From our side, what's different today is that the navigation that goes inside let's say the indoor commercial vehicles like AGVs tends to be things like ours, things like natural navigation or laser triangulation, whereas let's say, passenger cars on the road is a very different type of technology. I'm not educated enough to be able to explain to you why those are differently used technologies today, but definitely from an industry point of view and the applications where our customers are working today, manufacturing, logistics, those two being the big ones. Definitely we see that within those applications, we definitely see opportunity to look more into trying to work outdoors. For example, I think even in this video, there will be coming up an example of some very heavy shuttle AGVs. Bottom right there is a good example, carrying the steel coils, where these are working indoors, but within the perimeter of a private industrial site are also moving loads between buildings, or processes of fabrication, for example. And this traditionally for all the types of navigation you see in AGVs today, the outdoor piece has been very challenging. And we're working hard there and expect to be able to do more of that more efficiently in the future. So even just that part on its own could be a huge expander of the business, we think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think everybody, as far as I know, I mean, you say about the technical side of it, I don't know either. I mean, all I kind of keep hearing about is LiDAR. That seems to be is it light ranging, and I can't remember what LiDAR stands for, but yeah, that's a kind of system that they use for autonomous vehicles on the road. I'm sure there'll be other systems being developed all the time, and as I say, the convergence between the two might lead to other innovations across the board. And yes, certainly it's an absolutely massive market. And I don't think people like me who are a little bit apprehensive about driverless vehicles are going to be able to stop it. Not that I'd want to anyway, but it's just I mean, I hear the logistics sector has problems recruiting truck drivers. I mean, if you live in the UK, you'll know that we had a lot of problems with truck drivers leaving as a result of Brexit, and there was supply chain problems compounding the problems that happened during the pandemic. So yeah, the idea of having big hub to big hub autonomous vehicles that only trucks that only travel on motorways, and then the last mile is done by smaller vehicles being driven by humans, might actually be something the government may want to regulate more quickly or facilitate more quickly in order to get the supply chain moving. That's what I thought anyway.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
think
it's
they
a
could.
very interesting.
Forgive me. I was going to say I think they could be. It could be that last piece off the roads and into the factories and warehouses as well. To your point, truck drivers is one aspect, but equally within
Yeah.
the logistics environment, like forklift drivers, if you look, the material handling like association in the US called MHI, they do their annual report, and it's always like one of the top couple of challenges of organizations is finding people to drive and how to retain forklift drivers. So that's, when we speak to end users who are using our customers' vehicles, that's always one of the first reasons they give, for why are you looking at AGVs, or why did you start using automated vehicles instead? Because there's not going to be that struggle to find somebody to drive them.
Mm. Yeah, the common perception, probably even with me, for my own perception is, at least a little bit, is that robots will take over jobs, and all these forklift drivers, I sympathize with them. They're going to have to compete with these robots. But yeah, the reality is it's more likely that a company will find it very difficult to find those forklift drivers in the first place and retain them, because not many people want to do those jobs. So the idea of autonomous driverless forklifts and AMRs, I mean, AMRs are kind of interesting because they never had a kind of history of being driven or operated by humans anyway. So they technically didn't take over anybody's job, but the forklift drivers, apparently they're among the highest paid in a warehouse. So, in typical warehouse, the forklift driver gets more money than other people. But yeah, it's finding them and retaining them in the first place. Yeah, so glad you made that point. So yeah, so what's the in terms of future technologies or developments for you? I can see that what you're doing is going to keep you ticking over and developing naturally for quite some time, and it seems to go with your as you said, steady progress and steady growth. But how do you see the next few years developing for you?
Well, if we examine it like from a market research point of view, what we see the predictions looking at are that we're just really still at the beginning of that growth curve in manufacturing and logistics, both for AGVs and for AMRs. It may be a bit, yeah, I'm sure it will be a struggle for manufacturers of these vehicles this year in terms of supply chain, because some components are few and far between. But we see really at the bottom of that curve at the moment. I think technically I mentioned the indoor outdoor piece for sure, that will be important, that will help. But as you mentioned, we're predominantly a software company, so the fleet aspect is really key. In the, let's say, the early days of this latest generation of AGVs, it would be fairly standard for a smaller site to buy one or two, test those for a couple of years, and then slowly think about expanding their fleet. But we start to see, I think, more interest at a multinational level for companies who are thinking about automating all their warehouses across all their sites and trying to find that consistent tech platform across all of those. So we fully expect, I think, to see more advanced, larger fleets. So what we obviously from our side, our software there, which is called Ant Server, which can run lots of these different brands of vehicle with Ant inside. We're working out on the development side there to make sure that the functionality on that side is as advanced and smooth as it possibly can be. And how that works there, I would say that you have, obviously, if you go to a single AGV maker today, and maybe they have 5 different models of vehicle, you could create a fleet using different versions of those. But what we see as a more flexible future is that then if you realize, oh, hang on, I need an automated reach truck or like an underride AGV to move trolleys around, then if that manufacturer doesn't have that particular model, then what do you do? That's the big question that I think end users often come across as they're trying to expand. And the ideal situation, what you want to avoid there is having one fleet management system and virtual, set of virtual paths around your site for the first brand of AGV, and a whole new software set of virtual paths, meaning space around your site for the second brand. So in our case, we feel humbly that we're a little step ahead, or getting ahead of that situation, whereby if you look at the 90 or so different vehicles across brands that run on our Ant navigation today, something like 40% of those can actually operate in what we call a multi-brand fleet, so that they can work using that one fleet manager to manage all those and one set of virtual paths. And obviously the benefit of that to the end user is that it expands the breadth of the vehicles they could choose from to run on one site. So that component there, we see has been really important in the future, and that's what we're trying to work with our customers to expand, and trying to make sure our software is keeps being robust, but also bringing in new functions and as they're needed to make that run as smoothly as possible.
So you partner with quite a few different companies, quite a few different manufacturers of these AGVs and AMRs. Do you actually kind of do sort of integration service where you're saying, well, let's get some AMRs from this company, let's get some AGVs from that company, and let's get some driverless forklifts from another company, and then integrate them all together in a big solution? Or how does it work typically, or is there no typical sort of situation? Is it different for everyone?
For sure, it's different for everyone, but it's a great question. So typically how it works is we work with the vehicle maker, they develop their vehicle, they go to market with their vehicle. And if they sell that vehicle to an end customer, maybe a warehouse, for example, often as not, up to today, it's that vehicle maker who is integrating that vehicle on site and doing the installation and mapping and maintenance and so on. What we start to see more is that third-party integrator piece, where we're working with more and more organizations where they're working maybe on larger projects, automating a full site, and that let's say master integrator is bringing in technologies from different brands. So obviously they could be choosing vehicle technologies that are some of our customers, but we're also building those direct links so that, number one, they're aware of what our tech is and the vehicles that run on that, how they work, but also to let's say educate them on this multi-brand opportunity with a fleet that's driven by Ant.
Okay, last question, and I suppose I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, I suppose. I'm aware of BlueBotics, and I understand the service and product and the company a little bit. And and it looks new and it's innovative, and it is all of those things. But lately, I've also noticed that there are other companies emerging that offer what I think is kind of services in the same space. I'm not sure whether they're direct competitors, but what's the competitive landscape like for you at the moment, and how has it developed over the last few years? Is it right that new companies are emerging to offer these kind of things, or has it been like this for quite some time?
I think in one aspect it's similar to how it has been for a few years, and in another aspect it's quite new. So in terms of companies offering autonomous navigation that can work inside vehicles, I think we're fairly similar to how we were over the last few years, in that you have companies offering natural navigation solutions. So we're probably one of the main ones there. A couple of others offering different types of natural navigation that work slightly differently, but still based on those positioning the vehicle in the space by having permanent references in the environment that have been measured. Still in the navigation side, you have the big players like Cole Morgan, who are most of their, I think, business is based on the laser triangulation and vehicles that work autonomously based on that. On the newer side, I would say you also have, let's say, more vehicle agnostic fleet management solutions. So software companies basically heading in the same direction as what I've explained where we are today already with Ant, in terms of being able to run a multi-brand fleet and so on. What I would say there is that there are definitely some of those in Europe, and some of those today are basing that approach on Germany's standard called VDA 5050, which is designed to let lots of different vehicles work together. But we're still 2 to 5 years behind on that standard. So it's effectively trying to offer the same functionality that we're offering today with Ant across different brands. It's still a standard that's being developed. It doesn't effectively exist yet as a final standard, but what we're doing is making sure that our solutions are in line with that as well, so that we cover that need today and we're able to cover that globally in the future.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's the development of standards. Yeah, required. It's quite interesting that technology is ahead of the standards that are being developed. Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a fascinating interview and chat conversation. Thank you for your time and insight.
You're very welcome. Thanks very much.